Yo, so in this tutorial we will be basically using Geo Django and what we have in mind, what our projects want to be. Especially if we want to be able to use spatial queries. So if we have, for example, Earth right here, then maybe we have some center point that we specified. Then maybe we have some other point, and maybe we have another point. There is some distance to this center point. So let's say this one, the small one, is less than 10 kilometers to the center point, and this one is less than 100 kilometers, but it's greater than 10 kilometers. So then maybe we want to make some sort of Django query from this center point that returns all of these small objects that are less than 10 kilometers. So for example, we maybe only wanted this because it's less than 10 kilometers and not this one. And basically there are use cases, other projects that use this. For example, Tinder. Maybe you just want to return people in a certain area close to you, maybe 25 kilometers, or the veterans that have maybe 50 kilometers. Then maybe, I forgot what the name of it was, but maybe you have some driving service. Then maybe it's a taxi. Then maybe you just want to return those that are within a certain distance or something like that. So it can be used in many different cases, and I'll show you basically a use case where this is being used, where you can filter out this with GeoDjango. So just keep on watching and you will see how that's done. Okay, so let's start by installing this GeoDjango. We go to tutorial, we scroll down. Now we can see that we need some sort of spatial database, and a spatial database is basically that you can make queries based on where in the database you can store, for example, a point somewhere on the map, or for example you could store a polygon. For example, if we have 4 points, so there's such as we'll get a rectangle like this, that something can be contained inside of this rectangle or this polygon. And it wants us to install this post.js. And there are different instructions if you're on Mac or Windows. And we go with Windows because that's what we're using. We will install 64-bit of each version. Basically start by installing PostgreSQL. I know it says that you need 12, or it says the latest at 12, but on my other computer I've used 13 and it worked fine, so let's go with that. So when all of that is completed, I will start it up again. And a short note that you shouldn't need to be using PostgreSQL. For example, if you already made a database with something else, then it's possible to specify in the backend so that you're able to use, for example, MySQL or SQLite, for example. But in my experience, if you have trouble, then it's almost worth it to use PostgreSQL instead. Like maybe you want to transfer your database, but if you can't, maybe for example solve it within 2 days or something, just get it running. If you get stuck, then it's better to just follow this tutorial exactly. Now you need to specify your password for your PostgreSQL, and you should remember this password. And I'm only using admin123. Just keep it simple. It should be on the same port. Yes, next. Okay, so now that's installed, we get this at the end. We can see here when the installer completes, it will ask you to launch the stack builder.exe. Keep this checked. Yep, that's checked. We finish. We go on this port, the one we installed, we go next, download the application list. And then if we scroll down, PostGIS, stack builder, yes. We go to spatial extensions, PostGIS for x.y. And let's install the latest version. Next. This view won't be named admin, you will have a different username. Next. And then we just press next when that's done. Next. I agree. We don't need to create a spatial database, and even if you did create a spatial database right now, when I did it I got an error, but I know that you don't need to do it because it's done automatically when you start GeoDjango, for example. Next, next. Now it tells us if we want to register this variable, we just press yes, yes, and yes, yes, and close. Finish. Okay, so now we're done with this step. And now we come to the OSGeo4W. And it tells us that we need to install this. So we click on it. We open up the website. And here we find this download. We click on it. And now you see the first trap they have laid out. You can't click on this link if you're using Chrome. So what you can do is go with Internet Explorer and then click on this download. But then you got to remember that that's a double trap. You can't use this website that they have provided. Because this one would only install it for the 2-bit version, even if it doesn't say it. And even if it said in the previous text here that they only used 64, it's not the truth. So after a bit of searching, I searched on GeoDjango, download, and I found this website. And here we can find this previous installer. But here, what's this? I found the different versions. But basically here we can see you need for the 2-bit if you're using Python for the 2-bit, 64 if you're using 64-bit Python. And I did it with 64-bit Python, so this is the one we will be needing. And again, if you have some trouble with the different bit versions, different Python versions, then just do exactly as I've done it, because you wouldn't be surprised if they have laid out further traps. Press advanced, why not? Install from internet, yes, we want it on this root directory, and I think that's somewhat important because it could mess up with something else that you would have to change in the future. We do it for all users, we click next, it's just a temporary file, direct connection, and if one of these mirrors that you could download from doesn't work, then you can use another one, but I believe this first one should just work fine. And then we can just click next, finish. And now if we go here, you would be able to find this one. And I don't think, the first time you press this installation, it's not installing everything. So now I go into my Chrome, I press Ctrl J, and now I start the installer again, and I press yes. It could be because I pressed advanced, but I'm not sure. I'm not going to experiment with it. But then you can press express, and maybe they just have these default ones, or that they just unpack the setup the first time. I'm not sure. But right here we don't need this one. We don't need this one. We only need GeoDjango or filtering. Press next. We agree. I promise, we agree. We agree to this. Yes. And now I have sold my soul. Yep, now we just wait for this to install. And finish. Great, now that's... So after that is installed, they say we need to modify the windows. environments. Copy this, pressing this window key, and now we can type cmd, press enter and command prompt. And now we copied all of this, and then to paste it I just right click in this access denied. We close this again and we do the same thing again. We search for cmd, we right click, run as administrator, yes, and now we right click here and see that the variables have added successfully. And now if we go up here again, we did not install Python. They say here that we need a 32-bit Python. I'm not sure if that's really required, but it depends on what you installed before either way. So let's just go and install the Python. Oh my god. So they send us to some other website, but I know we can download it from the official Python website. Go to download, and I don't recommend always picking the latest version because not all of the packages for the Python you might be running aren't updated. But the one I did for my project was 3.7. We tried to find these old versions. Here we have one, for example. See if this one is correct. No, this one isn't the correct one for Windows because there is no setup. Let's go further down. Here we have another 3.7. Go down, and here we can see that we have executables for Windows, and we want 64 bits. We need to have 64. These are 32 bits. It doesn't matter which one we pick here, but I'm going to go to web installer. Yes, we want to open it, and then we can add the Python to the path, and we customize the installation. Customize installation, yes. And that's something I always do. I always place my installation here on the C drive, and I want to install for all users because that's what I like. I don't need debug variables. Install. Now this is done, and we just need to close. And now we can just test that we have Python install again. I just open here, type cmd, the usual, enter, so type Python. And you can see that installed, we have the 64-bit version. Yep. Okay, so now we come here, we start the console again when we want to install the dependencies. So we have pip, that works. Hit install, and what we want to install is the Django REST frame. Oh my god, it didn't get copied, I don't know why. Django REST framework. Now the Django REST framework is installed, but I also want to have a virtual environment to be installed. Great, now these are installed. I want to create a new folder for the project. And then I want to type cmd inside of this window, press enter, and now we will have a cmd console in this specific project folder. And in this folder we want to actually be creating a virtual environment, and we can verify that we installed the virtual environment by going into where we installed our Python, and I installed it on Python 3.7. Then we go to scripts, and here we can find this virtual environment. And because I have a Windows path to the scripts folder, I could just type this virtual environment, and I just type whatever name I want to have for this virtual environment, and it'll be done for this Python version. Great, now that's done. We go to the project we created before. We have this virtual environment, and we already are in this folder. And now we want to go into this virtual environment. Then we want to see the scripts, I believe it is called. It means that we have entered one layer, cd vnv, we went into this folder, we went into scripts, and then there is an activate here that we need to specify because we want to use it. Then what I always do, I always just type it like this. I go into this folder and just type activate, and now we can see it we're inside this folder. cd out, cd, and now we're in the default project folder again. And I didn't need to install the Django before, but so I need to do this again. I'll probably just cut it out, to be honest. We install our Django REST framework, and now we just got to wait until that's installed. And now when that's installed, we can see that we're inside our project folder. Now we can basically just do Django admin start project and config basically what we want to call it. Okay, so double check now, we should do config dot. And that means that we will create a project inside the current folder. And I feel like I always name my files config because this is the config for the project, and then you have your settings, config settings, like instead of having a repetitive name that you otherwise would have, if you know what I mean. But it's fine if you don't. Okay, then we want to create our app. Yeah, I tried some different command, create app. I know that's not the command. Apparently it's start app, we'll create our app, and let's just call it distance. I know it's a bad name, but it's just to showcase that everything would be working just for this example. So now you can see that our app is created for distance, and then we would need to edit the config. Let's edit the settings. We are right here, install apps, and we want to install distance. Control S so that we're saving it. Basically now I'm thinking that in this settings folder we would want to make it compatible. So for example that we're changing the database to Postgres instead, to the spatial database. So, and now when I went back to the tutorial we followed before, I can see that they wanted us to also install this Psycop G2 that is required. Basically an interface between Python and PostgreSQL. So let's copy that. Let's go into this virtual environment. You must have this VNV that we made before so that we're installing the modules for the project that we're working on. And now install that. Okay, so now if you remember what we did before, we pressed here on Windows and we followed all of these things, the steps in these windows. So now if we scroll down, we've done this, we have installed this one. This one we haven't installed because it's, for example, if you're using SQLite, the default Python database. And then we, for example, can see the different databases that we could have used. For example, you could use this with MySQL, Postgres, which is this one, or SQLite, which is the default Python, if you just feel like it. But I think it's better to just go with Postgres and just not to experiment too much, because just not feel it go wrong. And instead we need to add this to the installed app. Go into a project again, go into our config, we go to settings, scroll down, go to our installed apps, we add this, we save, we cancel it down. Now we can go in here, you can see that we're in the virtual environment. Now we can see that we get this GDAL error, basically that we need to install GDAL. And basically you can't just do this pre-install GDAL, because we get these errors. And basically how this is done is that you go into your favorite. If you use Google or DuckDuckGo, and you can set Python extensions. I believe this is what it's called. Yeah, extension packages for Windows. This is basically where you download if it fails with pip install to find a specific version I need. You see, I press Ctrl F, then I search for GeoDjango. I find it here. I click, and now we know if I type Python here, we can see that the Python version I'm using 3.7.9. Which one is here? We can see CP7 is basically the version. You can see that this has here Win32 or AMD 64, Windows AMD 64. And we're using 64 in this case. This is the latest one. We can actually no CP9, and here we can find a later version, also 64. Let's click on that. So wait for the download. Click here to show in folder. Now you can see that it's downloaded. I go to the desktop where I have my project, and I just place it here. I don't really need to place it if I don't want to, but I feel it's nice to have it in the same folder. You could have it in a subfolder as well, like dependencies or something. I press Ctrl Z, press enter to enter out of this. Now right there to see that it's actually here. See that it's here, pip installed, and now just type in this name. So one of the things that we forgot to do, the databases from the installation page, we got spatial backends, and then we are using Postgres, so we need to specify that we're using this one as the database. Right now we're using the SQLite database, but that's not the one that we want to be using. And basically we have specified the engine. We specify the name. We could, for example, colors for my database. And I'm just looking these variables up, like this login information from other project. User, maybe I think that this will be Postgres, and then you will have a password, and this one will depend, but we specified admin 1 to 3 in our project. Then we need to specify a host, and one for a localhost project is this, and then we have specified port, and that's what we specified when we installed the Postgres. Then a comma, and then from we save this, and then from the Postgres that we installed before, we type pgadmin4 to open up the database. And now you would specify your master password. I believe when the first time you start this, you will specify the master password, or if it's the login to your account, or if it's the admin 1 to 3 that we had before. So this could be your unique password, basically. Now we'll find servers, PostgreSQL 13, and then we'll find our databases, and this Postgres, I believe, is a default one. We will create a new one. The database will be called my database, but you could call it something that's relevant for your project. And if you remember, in the settings, the name that we specified was my database. So if you pick something different, you need to pick the same thing here. or enter the same thing here. The user, we can see that the user is Postgres. You could create a new user potentially if you want. And then we save. And you can see the admin password here is from the one when we install it. We can see it's up and running. Now we can minimize this. Everything seems to be working. So now we close this down. Open. And now we're able to start the project. Next okay. You can see that you have some migrations. So migrations. Let's get this done. Okay, so let's just finish this project off and play around with it a little bit just to see that everything works. In the meanwhile, I have extended this distance application. So for example, we have a view so that we can make a post request. And inside this view, I've added this post request, and basically this is something new, and it's based upon this documentation from how to do the distance queries with it. And if we scroll to the top, these distance queries, scroll down to find it. Can we find it? These are the different distance queries that we could be using. If the distance is less than what we have specified, less than or equal, greater than, or greater than equals, we have used less than, as seen here. Wait, here it is. And if we scroll down, we should find an example. If we look here, they have made a model based on this part, which is new. And then we have made this point field, which is exclusive to these spatial databases. If we look in this folder, you can see that we have done something similar. What I've prepared, so we just test it. It's something similar as this one. Just keep it the same, doesn't really matter. I think I'll just keep it like this because I already made a point. Actually, never mind. Okay, so let's just finish this thing off. In the meanwhile, I have prepared some files. So after we had set up GeoDjango and all of the set up the database, for example, I have made a model, serializer, and views that we will be using. And how I built this was going to the default GeoDjango page. And then we have gone over the installation, the tutorial, and what we wanted to work with were distance. We want to do distance queries on different points on the Earth. And these are the different functions that we could apply. That the distance is less than some value, then it's less than or equal, or then it's greater than equal. Now we will find some example. You can see that it's not, if you want to work with models, it's importing it from a different module part. So if you look what I've done, it's something similar. I've done it like this, and then I have it as geo models because I like it more. But you could as well just use these models here as well, but it should work. You can see that it's very similar, same SR ID. And then if we go further down, we talk a bit about how queries are performed. And if we look at my views, where I would perform can see that we have a post request here, and then we have a serializer, and the serializer basically just takes a latitude and longitude, and this means that we, for example, if we use Postman, we could send in values of this, and then it sees that it gets a valid value to this post request. Is it valid? Yes, it should be valid. Then we get our data, serializer.data, and then you can see that we make a point similar to how they've done here. We use the format, so we take the values of the data, the long and the latitude, and put them into the point. What's worth noting is oftentimes you write latitude first and then the longitude, but in how they've done it here is that they have first put the longitude and then the latitude, which is a little bit weird, but that's how they've done it. But I guess it's unclear what is the correct way to do it, maybe, I'm not sure. So now we have the center point that we want to work along. Then we take all of the different locations, and then we filter them, and then we take the point variable as this is the column, like in the model that we worked with before. If we look at model, we know that we named this point. We name this point. So we look at all points and then see if the distance is less than this center point that we're working from. Then you can specify the distance, for example kilometers, till the other points. For example, have 100 kilometers. And then I'm just returning the response. And then another thing that I did, if we go to this admin, then we open it. Then if we import this, and then we could admin site register location admin.osmgeoadmin. And that basically means that if we create a super user, just with create super user, then you just supply your username and password. Then when you're running the server, we could go in here, go to admin, then of course we'll log in, and what we then could do is add some locations that we then would filter. Let's add one in Africa, save and add another. It was successfully added. Maybe we'll place one in Italy, save and add another. Then maybe one in Hamburg. We'll just save. Now we have 3 points. Then I thought I've searched on Google Maps, and if you search with the Google Maps, you could specify a location. For example, we specified Hamburg. Click on it, and now we would get the latitude and the longitude. But if you remember the point that we specified in the program before, they actually start with the longitude and then the latitude, but they do the opposite here, so that's something that you should keep in mind. We copy the latitude, we paste it into the Postman to do our post request. We paste it in. Just check that it's running. Yep. And now we would send post request. And now we get one location back, location 12. That's the one in Germany. We added 2 others that were further away. You can double check. That is the object number 12. Object number 12. And we can see that this is the one in Germany. Yep, and that's all that I want to show with this project. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.